Part 67. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 667. In Nalanmo's view, although the emperor seemed to be very good to her now, after all, he was an emperor of a country. If he discovered such things, she would surely chop her without hesitation. Yanj chewed on the meat, nodded his head, and after eating, he said to Nalanmo, "I'm not such a casual person. The last time I lost your blood, I really wanted to change to a man, but I've been walking around the capital and I haven't met anyone." Taking a sip of the tea he handed over, she sighed and said, "If it's as casual as you say, I don't have to worry about it that much." He was both happy and sad and blocked by her words. "Still her," she sighed again, then looked up and looked at him, "Do you have a brother?" Naranmo. The heart was ups and downs because of her words, because he had no heart trouble. He frowned and looked at her with an angry look, "Murderess, if you dare to touch my Nalan family, if I know, I will kill you." She winced and said immediately, "I don't touch it, don't be so fierce." The voice was soft and aggrieved, "You are so fierce, I have no appetite for food." His anger was stung again and he was taken back. This woman, he didn't know what to do with her. She put down her chopsticks, got up and stayed on, put on the bucket, walked a few steps and turned back, and asked him, "I have touched these dishes, and you won't eat them if you want to come. Anyway, you put them down too. You can't put it in a lunch box and take it with me." He nodded, seeing that she had warned Yi well, then he called on Xiaoi to come in and order a few words. She crawled boringly on his desk and played with a pen on a pen holder. "Master, haven't you married a wife yet?" The question was purely superfluous, but he still sent the ghost back and said, "Never. In the future, you will marry a wife. I will send you a set of calligraphy and painting. I drew it by myself. It is very good. Your Majesty also likes me because I like my paintings." Naranmo. He remembered the book of Returning to the Garden, which he still treasured in the drawer, and had been reluctant to return it to the emperor. However, he didn't say it, only nodded slightly, "Okay." He said yes, but instead of hiding from her eyes, he looked up and looked at her. She wore a bucket, and he couldn't see her face clearly, but her eyes did not move away. Her thoughts fell into the sorrow, or did she poke the tip of his nose with a pen? "Sir, has anyone told you that you look so beautiful?" His thoughts returned to the cage instantly, and he bowed his head slightly, staring at her. "When was the first time you saw me?" She tilted her head, as if thinking back, "I was fortunate enough to see you once in the street before entering the palace, and I thought at the time that you are so beautiful, and the painting must look better." He listened to her drawing, and his brow could not help jumping. She went on to say, "You look so good, you should smile a lot, don't always stretch your face, look plain old. You haven't become married at this age, you have to reflect on yourself." Xiaoxi knocked on the door at this time. He opened the door and took in the lunch box. The lunch box was the snack he prepared for her. Yan Ji stared in surprise. "Did you prepare it for me again?" "I just don't want to waste food on the table, but I'm already full. Those meals, I will eat them in a while, I will not waste them." She nodded and took the lunch box. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 668. When going out, Yan Ji turned his head and said to Nalan Mu, "It's too tanning outside, you have bad bones, don't go out." Nalan Mo didn't say a word, went out with her, and brought in a soft sedan, letting people take her to where she was going. Waiting for her to leave the Prime Minister's mansion, he called in his dark guard again and asked someone to stare at her whereabouts. Yanj went to the tattoo hall first. And Wei went to the tattoo hall to find out that she was going to tattoo on her back. Later, the dark guard waiting at the door did not wait until dark. When he asked again, the upper room where Yan Song was located was already empty. Nalan Mo listened to Dark Wei's reply, and said nothing, but pursed his lips. She stabbed the red plum that he drew on her back, and she was not afraid. Wouldn't the emperor find it? She is a woman who is so bold when she goes to a place like the tattoo house and her back is exposed in front of people. The woman's behavior made him hate his teeth, but for some reason he didn't know why. The man was expelled by Nalan Modi, and Nalan Modi was later separated. But Nalan Mo's mind was like blocking something recently, so that he had a lazy job and couldn't keep up anything. He was boring about nothing. Forcing herself to no longer think of her, but every time she faced the emperor early, her charming beauty would appear in her mind. The emperor treats her, okay. Did she continue to take medicine against the emperor? Has anyone insulted her in the harem? Compared to Nalan Mo, Yan Ji lived very moistly. She had a good meal in the prime minister's mansion, and her body and mind were refreshing. Even Zhu Wei satirized her words with the chicks. Zhu Wei asked the song in a timid voice, "Miss, are you cuckolding yourself?" The song did not respond, and the cub hummed and said in a weird voice, "Doesn't your young lady like the greenest thing on her head? Her goal is to have a green head." Words of song. She is a tree. She doesn't like the green above her head. That's the aesthetic distortion. I don't bother to care about these two old animals. A month later, she went to the capital outside the palace to find a medical museum, and was disappointed that she still couldn't get pregnant. She was deeply skeptical that the adult may not really have the ability to make a person pregnant. Of course, it is possible that too few seeds are dropped. The breeze in the afternoon, and the curtains around the pavilion dazzled. Nalan Mo, who was holding the chess pieces, was thinking about it. The emperor sitting opposite said, "Be careful, do you have anyone to admire?" He hesitated for a moment. The chess pieces had been placed, but not where he wanted to. The emperor on the opposite side did not notice his strangeness, and did not even wait for him to respond. The emperor sighed and said with sorrow, "During this time, I can't eat well or sleep well, and I think about it day and night. Be careful, do you have any experience in this area?" You said, "How can you please your beloved?" When he heard it at the end, his heart was beating, but his eyebrows were gradually calm. "Your Majesty, you are the emperor of a country, why should you please others, love you without you, and those who do not like you, even if you do too much, you will not look at you. Your Majesty, you should take the world community as the most important thing, and your children's personal feelings are nothing." Yan Ji looked up slightly, staring at him in astonishment. "Be careful, you must be the one who doesn't think about it. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 669. After a pause, Yanj said, "I used to think the same way as you, but when I met someone who was thinking about it, I was all about him, and I just wanted to make him happy, but I didn't see him frown. After that," he sighed again, "if you want to be a good emperor, you are destined not to take care of him, and you will feel uncomfortable when you think about it." Nalan Mo bowed her head, her eyes were complicated, and the emperor's admiration must be her. The emperor was so bored that she must not have liked the emperor yet. Holding the pieces in his hand tightly, he suddenly felt that it was time to speed up the emperor's postponement. Nalan Mo has always been a character that says to do it right away. The ministers went on the second day, listed various principles, and urged the emperor to decide what to do afterwards. Yan Ji did not expect Nalan Mo to come in such a hand. She had wanted to stimulate this guy, but it turned out to be awkward. Her heart was very depressed, although she was swayed by the floods in the south, and she reprimanded the ministers. There is anger in the air. So that afternoon, she simply went to the post cooker of the Prime Minister's house and planned to have enough for this meal. Really? The meal has not been served on her table. Here comes Nalen Mo. He stood at the door, facing the light, and Yan Ji could not see his expression on his face. He only put his hands on the table with his hands folded, his voice pondered, and said weakly, "Although I thought about it before, I'll definitely get around your place, but I haven't eaten yet. Can you give me some time? I'll leave after eating." Nalen Mo didn't speak. He slowly walked into the room, the light gradually dimmed, but the features on his face became clearer. The man, as expressionless as the enemy, looked at her like a tiger. Yan Ji could not help but reached out and touched his face, wondering, "Master, why do you look at me like this?" The dining room near the kitchen was ordered to help her to prepare for her after she left that day. He asked the steward every day if she had arrived, and even while walking around Fuzhong every day, he would make a circle in this dining room. The table and chairs in this room, including the couch in front of the window and the window screen embroidered with red plums, were all selected by him. Will she come? He often asks himself this way. She knew he was killing her, and she would definitely not want to come to the Prime Minister's house again. Days passed, and he had no hope of it. However, I am used to it and come here every day. As soon as he walked outside the courtyard today, the housekeeper hurried to inform him that she was here. She is coming. She's really coming. Why is she so bold that she is not afraid of him killing her? He didn't know whether it was joy or anger. He stared at her, and when she said that he was there, he turned around, and finally he could not hold on to that bitterness. A few steps came to her, he picked her up on the table, and he bowed his head and kissed her lips. Yanj kicked him up and said, "Sir, you said you would stop doing this kind of thing with me." He sealed her mouth, swallowed her words into her belly, and ripped off her clothes, and he was at this table and integrated with her. Yan Ji didn't expect the sick man to play and please, it was no worse than her. On such a small table, he played her in various poses. However, he was probably quite content with his own paintings. His favorite thing was that she leaned her back to him. His hands would rest on her back, and her cool abdomen would run on her back. She even put her body on her back, biting her earballs and shouting, "Yui you, Yui you." After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 670. In the small inner room on this side, on the small table on this side, Nalen Moran took her as if she was pregnant and rubbed it. The skin clings again and again, exhausting every effort, just trying to rub her into his flesh and bones. In this way, he no longer had to worry about her. He leaned over and turned her to face her. Her face was crimson and crimson, her eyes were bursting with tears, but her lips were bright and red, as if she could bleed. She was holding him in tears, her tender voice was low. "Master, you can't do this. Tell me to be careful." Yanj was aggrieved, and called around his neck and shouted, "Be careful." Her cheek was sticking to his face, and misty eyes were squinting at him, saying softly, "Be careful, this time you are the one I associate with, I have nothing to do with me." Her voice murmured, and she bit her lip, and her delicate lips instantly seemed to be bitten by her blood. He lowered his head, put her lips on his back, tossed and tortured, didn't speak, only responded with actions. Yanj was swallowed into his stomach again and again, and he couldn't help wondering, "Be careful, how can you be so powerful this time, did you take any medicine?" Before he responded, she held his face in both hands and said seriously, "The medicine is not good for the body, and it will not be so in the future." He didn't speak, staring at her with gritted teeth. She finally couldn't bear it, and took a bite on her shoulder. She let go of it with a bite, but even so, she had a bruise on her shoulder. Such delicate skin. He froze, and his anger was replaced by the distress. He lowered his head back to the place where he had bitten, and his tongue turned round and round, trying to help her soothe the pain in this way. She hummed in pain at first, but then snuggled up in his arms and lay on him as if she had no bones, and did not come down afterwards. "Be careful, my body is dirty, and I am fresh and refreshing when I go out today. You have to help me clean it." At that time, it felt hot, and she might sweat when eating a meal here, so she intentionally separated a cubicle into a bathroom, which was unexpectedly useful now. Nalan Mo hugged her to the bathroom to help her clean inside and out. It was strange that he had no extra to women. He didn't even understand himself. Why did he stick to her so much? What's so good about her? Obviously it's not good at all, but he is obsessed with her as if he went into a demon. When she helped her clear that place, she even looked at it foolishly, only to find that her body was beautiful everywhere. Everywhere attracted him, not enough to look at it. I really wanted to hold it in the palm of my hand and on the tip of my tongue. He never thought he was an indulgent. When I got to the bathroom, I came again with her in that small space, listening to her tender voice and shouting, "Be careful, you bastard." He felt strangely content in his heart. She was lazy and tossed by him. According to her own words, the bones were scattered into pieces, so he helped her dress up, and even the meal was fed to him with a spoonful of chopsticks. She rested in his arms and softly instructed him softly, "Be careful, I want to eat this, be careful, I want to drink soup, be careful, feed slowly, the soup is all over my chin." He bowed his head, kissed her chin, lingered, and drew the soup and her moan into his mouth. "Don't go back to the palace," he took her and said quietly, "will you stay in the Prime Minister's house in the future? After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 671. Without waiting for the words to be spoken, Nalan Mo continued, "It is also good to be the wife of the Prime Minister, better than the Queen. Although the Queen is the mother of the world, she can be very tired to be the Queen. To manage the harem, everyone will be watched." Once the Emperor wanted another woman to be the Queen moved from Fenji Palace to the Cold Palace, and then it was very miserable in the Cold Palace. You are the wife of the Prime Minister. The position of the wife of the Prime Minister will always be yours. There are many cooks in the Prime Minister's office, and there are many delicious foods. You will not get tired of eating it forever. He didn't dare to look at her eyebrows, just dropped her lips between her foreheads, took her into her arms, her heart pounding, waiting for her response. She lifted her head slightly, caught his lips on the lips, and moistened his lips little by little. "Master, you know, you can't marry me. But thank you." Her voice was soft and murmured, as if she were talking about something. Words fell into his ears, and his frantic heart seemed to be poured with of ice, and his heart was instantly cold. Yeah, he couldn't marry her. He is the head of the Nalan family and he is the Prime Minister of a country. How could he marry her, such a woman who had no identity and was even stained by the Emperor? Even though he was bloody, and even if he wanted to abandon all the worldliness, there would be countless people pulling him and pulling him behind him, forbidding him to take the wrong step. Like, the teacher gave him the word caution. Be cautious. He has to be cautious in everything, and he must not go wrong. He squeezed her arm slowly, his throat rolled, and suddenly he was extremely sad, but it was still like a drowning man who wanted to grab the last straw. "Then you should know that even if you have your majesty won't make you the last." She slowly pushed him away. She settled down and fixed her own long hair in front of the mirror, organizing her own clothes. She wore the dipper on the hanger, and she walked to him, crouching down against him. "Master, help me tie it." He knew she was angry. She must be angry. But he didn't understand why she didn't respond to his words. His fingertips touched her white greasy neck, and the thought of wanting to hold her in his arms and trying to imprison her in this world suddenly became extremely intense. He has never been so impulsive for anything. He realizes that this situation is not good at all. She wanted to imprison her, to be beside him, open her eyes and close her eyes, and she could stay beside him. But, thinking about it, and thinking about killing her, a variable that belongs to his life, without her, maybe he would be able to return to ordinary reason. She leaned slightly on her side, her head resting on his leg, and said softly, "I know that I won't be a queen. Even if I have a child, even if the child is under Her Majesty, I can't be a queen. But, I don't be willing, I do want to stay in that harem, and I do want to be in the presence of Her Majesty in the future, and I do want to live in a frame that is picked by others. Sir, I find you not because you look good, nor because I like you. I find you because you are the Prime Minister. I've been using you. Sir, don't like me anymore. A woman like me is selfish and unwilling to be restrained by the world. Her heart and eyes are black. A man like you who has a light moonlight should have a better woman. The child will be your wife, not me. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 672. The words of Yang were like a heavy hammer, hammer by hammer, falling on Nalan Mo's heart. His head buzzed, and he didn't know what he was thinking. All her head was her, all her voice. This woman, she is really bad, she is used to pinching his weakness. She knew that he had lived up to all kinds of things, so he used such words to poke his heart. He regretted that she was too late, how could he still attack her? She said nothing, got up, took a few steps toward the door, and stopped again. Master, thank you for not killing me. I am not afraid of anything in my life. The most feared thing is death. If so, if you have a downfall in the future one day, I will do everything I can to help you, but if you want to come, you won't have that day, so if I say this, it will be empty talk. After she said it, she smiled softly. She lifted the black veil and looked at him. The smile gradually converged. She stared at him and said, "I'm gone." All smart people, how can he not understand what she means in every sentence? But in the end, she was still reconciled, and still wanted to get confirmation from her mouth. Are you going to never come to the Prime Minister's house again? Instead of answering, she called him, "Be careful, I'm afraid of death." He was afraid of death, so he didn't dare to challenge his patience anymore. The black veil fell, completely covering her last glance at him. She turned her head and walked away. He looked at her back, and suddenly remembered, that day, he watched her approach. He felt the warmth around her neck with his fingertips, and he stared at her back, sitting still. Suddenly I regret it. If it was just now, I just didn't say those words. If. But already, not so much. The dark guard of the Prime Minister's palace still followed step by step, and it took a lot of effort to get rid of people. The chick asked her curiously, "You won't, and you really want to break off with Nalan Mo in the future? You can be careful, he's blackened." Hearing the innocent and childish question of the chicken, she may not bother to talk about her songs, but today she is full, she is in a good mood, and she is patient. She explained, "At this moment, just like last time, he said again I have nothing to do with me, or I will stick it up. I said this today. It may not have to be achieved in the future, and it is not an oath that will be beaten by the thunder. Even if it is repeated afterwards, it is not what a big deal." The chicken was stunned by the words. "Wood, how do you feel like you are getting worse and worse in the case of the mighty one? You now you really look like the bad woman on TV." Yan Ji snorted coldly, "Do you think I'm black? Isn't she bad? She's not blackened, but the mighty one, that's a solid blackout. Chicken, to be honest, I think you're going to be dark. Zhu Wei said weakly, women are not bad, men do not love, younger sister, I support you to the end. Maybe the so-called powerful person likes you like this. Alas, Yanj felt that Zhu Wei rarely spoke a word of people. Satisfied again, different from the gloomy face of the Prime Minister in the chapel and the stinginess of the Emperor's mood looks very high, it is like a man who is going to be a groom immediately, his eyes are full of joy. This made the ministers a little bit confused, and never heard that a woman in the harem climbed onto the Emperor's bed. How could the Emperor be so happy? The joy of Yanj did not last long. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 673. These times happened to be the rainy season. The first day was pouring heavy rain and the second day was drizzle again, just when everyone thought that the third day would be sunny. In the early morning of the third day, the thunder was billowing, not only with heavy pouring rain, but also hail in the rain. Yan Song did not fall asleep because of the noise of the rain. Even the heavy rain did not matter, and it even brought hail. This was not a good thing. Thinking of the people's crop this year because of this hail rain, maybe the grain would not be harvested, and she was very upset. Just got up and stood in the window with a cloak, watching the heavy rain outside. Qin Gong gently opened the door and explored the probe. Su Shi didn't expect Yan Ji to get up, and unexpectedly shouted, "Your Majesty." Li Gong, who had previously served as a chanting song, died of a serious illness. Gong Qin took the place of Li Gong temporarily, and now he is the number one around the Emperor. In general, I am afraid that others will handle it and be careful not to make mistakes. Yan Song looked up at him, Wen said, "Come in. If it's okay, it won't run in the middle of the night." Father Gong Qin busily came in and knelt on the ground, "Your Majesty, General Genies is back." Now outside the palace, he screams that there are important things to meet His Majesty, and he has been out of the palace for half an hour of rain. Yan Ji was slightly surprised. Su Fang was sent to Xining. The reasoning matters and Xining would not be involved at all. Why did Su Fang return to Beijing in the middle of the night to meet her? Let him in, and by the way, let some cold soup with to come. Qin Gong answered it, and then hurried back. Su Fang, who was soaked, did not take long to the Hug building outside the Kinzen Hall. He took the towel handed down by Qin Gong and wiped his soaked face and hair. After thanking him, it was only Qin the father-in-law led to Kinzen Hall. The rain outside was too heavy, and his clothes were close to his body, and every step was a wet mark. Yan Ji saw him in the dust, thinking that it would take at least 3 days for Xining to get to the capital. She was surprised and more solemn. When she saw Su Fang salute, she walked over to support him. What happened? When Gong Qin saw Su Fang not talking, he was swept away by the words and immediately retired with interest, and closed the door gently. Su Fang didn't speak, his lips clenched, his thick sword eyebrows slightly wrinkled, and in his long and narrow eyes, Heio's eyes were fixed on the words. Yan Song was wrong with his expression. This is not the expression Su Fang would make. Isn't this Su Fang? When this thought came out, the alarm bell in her heart rang loudly, but she calmly said to him, "Such a wet clothes will stick to the body, will catch a cold. If it is not a major matter, go and change the clothes." She didn't finish talking, and even stepped away from him without a trace. The man suddenly stepped forward, clasped her shoulders with one hand, and bowed her mouth with the shout she was about to exit. His kiss was more urgent than the storm outside. The dampness on his body was on Yan Ji's body, and she shivered coldly, and she struggled subconsciously, biting his teeth. But even if he bit him, he tore her clothes regardless. Grass. What the is this? Although Yanj likes it, she doesn't like being strong, and she doesn't like others being strong. So after a short struggle, she reached out and summoned her basalt pot. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 674. At this moment, the man let go of Yanj, only staring at her insanely smiling. I have been looking for you for a long time, a long time, a long time, Yan, Yan. He murmured, lowered his head again, and kissed Yanj. His clothes were ripped off by himself, and he just clung to Yanj's body. Next moment, he strode towards the inner room while holding Yanj. Go, where is the bathhouse? Song, chicken, cock, chicken. Which old lover is this? The pretends to be dead. There are so many old lovers of this wood that he can't even recognize it. How can it know which one it is? Zhu Wei called fiercely, Miss, no matter what he is, let me die first, and then I dare to invade my most holy girl, and must kill him. Yanj Suanweopot appeared and was taken back by herself. The sad and happy expression on the man's face was not false, and the idiotic looked at her expression, entangled, as if to swallow her alive, making her cocky. Who is this person? How did you find her? Ever since there was a system of fans, it was difficult for even the devouring beast to find her. Why did he find her and recognize her? Of course, the most important thing is, who is this guy? Chicken, cock, chicken, paralysis, you quickly analyze, who is this? Chicken, there is no clue. You ask him, what do you know? When asked, why do you have to torture me? Grass. The man's mood was obviously unstable, and she was afraid that her question would stimulate the man. She died in the hands of the old lover before the mission was completed, which she didn't want to have. Said to go to the bathroom to take a bath, but it is obviously a bathroom poly. Men seem to have been hungry for thousands of years, and never let go of their body holding Yanj. The most important thing is that this guy's means of solicitation are very superb, very, very technical, and this guy like Nalan Mo is totally incomparable with this guy. No, it should be said that 100 Nalan Mo is not as high-tech as the man in front of him. Yan Song was dying by him, and for a moment even arranged a queen position for the man. Hemp eggs, Nalan Mo or anything, she didn't want anything at all, and now she wanted to hug the man and roll again. Well, until pregnancy. How can such a good old lover never be impressed? Two people from the bathroom to the bed. Although the action is sometimes rude, but most of the time, the man's action is more to please the words. He kissed her spine, her collarbone, and his dark eyes stared at her infatuatedly. Yanj in his arms, there is a kind of person who really makes a man fascinated. The beauty was misleading. Yanji forgot everything in the arms of the man, and fell asleep to sleep. When she woke up again, she heard someone crying beside the bed. Opening her eyes, she only put on a piece of clothing, and the man kneeling beside the bed wrapped in a quilt, crying sadly and out of breath next time. Seeing that the song was sober, Su Fang, who was crying lowly, immediately became louder, and said with a twitch, Your Majesty, you are actually a woman. Your Majesty, you fell asleep and I whine. My virgin who has been preserved for 20 years was taken away by His Majesty. I'm all my wife-in-law, oh, now I want to die. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 675. Words of Song. What kind of situation is this? What about her old lover? How do I resolve this situation? The chicken was gloating, are you supposed to be found out by stealing your love? Nine-tailed added, it should be found by the lover's original storytelling. Although Yanj had countless grass mud horses in her heart, as an emperor, she had the calmness of Taishan's collapse without change. Although there was only one piece of clothing on the bare body, red, purple, and purple strawberries were all over, and her exquisite body was dazzling. But she couldn't bear her momentum. She stared indifferently at Su Fang. Don't you want to die? Is this a sword hanging? Sword is wiped on the neck, it's easy to die. If you want to die, you should be sharp. Su Fang. In tears, he looked up and stared at the words in disbelief, and his eyes were exactly like looking at a mischievous man. Well, Your Majesty, you won't sleep and I won't recognize you, right? Does this man still want to talk to her? Yanj sneakily wanted to summon the basalt pot, otherwise, let me stun someone first. Lest this guy know the world for a while. At this time, Su Fang reached out and touched his nose. Tears and Tears screamed at the song, and said shamefully, Your Majesty, are you responsible for me? The star eyes of the expectation and excitement looked like a little daughter-in-law who touched the porcelain goddess. For a moment, Yang Guan was challenged. She stretched her face and said calmly, I'm a little bit cold. This guy rolled all the quilts and covered her with a thin dress. Does this really treat her as an emperor and a woman? Su Fang seemed to react to this, and he hurried crawled up onto the bed, and covered the quilt with the person. Words of song. She's not blushing yet. Su Fang's face is flushing. When she leaned over, she kissed her cheek and said carefully, Your Majesty, I'm still uncomfortable in that place. You can help, how am I? He took Yanj's hand and carefully placed it somewhere in his uncomfortable swelling. He had thick brows and big eyes, and he was so heroic that he blinked at the moment and dressed as a poor girl. Is there any tears on his face? Maybe the snot hasn't been wiped clean. In order to eat a meat, it is really unscrupulous. Yan Ji raised his feet and went to beat him. Su Fang lifted Yan Ji's knees and rushed in. Your Majesty, this is not my wolf ambition. If you get out of bed, will you turn your face and kill me by not admitting it? Yanj bit his shoulder. Yes, I will kill you right away. Su Fang chuckled, his voice bright and happy. The Chen has never been out of this bed. Since the Chen has been slept by His Majesty, he will be His Majesty in the future, lying in bed every day waiting for His Majesty. Although he smiled, he moved very quickly. Yanj hung his hands around his neck, slightly raised his head, and bit his lips. The blood burst into her mouth immediately, and the smell of salty blood made her slightly stunned. Men did not stop. Until the clanging at the bed, the man reluctantly watched Yanj get up and went to the bathroom. He soon followed. Your Majesty, help me wash it for you. He is very attentive, of course, he still remembers to show his strong back and mermaid line while sticking to Yanj's body. This guy, like a male dog that has been invited, is always sticking to the song. Yanj, not only has he overturned, but he has also been hit by porcelain, so tired. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 676. Yanj did not talk to Su Fang. Weak body, weak heart. With such a big pit, she couldn't figure out how to jump in. What made her speechless was that Su Fang obviously became a dog skin plaster. She doesn't mind multiple bed partners. But the 3 generations of the Su family had a single pass. Su Fang was a man who had to marry a daughter-in-law to give birth to a son. Such a man did not want to provoke him at all. She didn't want to provoke her. Although Narenmo said few words, he was showing that he was very irritating everywhere. Su Fang is different. This guy has a lot of words, and he doesn't look serious at all. However, this guy is obviously a good family. As for killing Su Fang Mikao, I have thought about this song. But because this kind of thing killed the generation's loyal Su family, she really couldn't do it. Su Gu guessed what Yanj thought. Su Fang reached out and pressed Yan Song's frowning brows seriously, and said solemnly, Your Majesty, this is death, and you will not tell anyone, you can rest assured, I will only be happy in front of you, and will never show a little clue in front of others. Yan Song looked up and looked at him. He did not wait for the song to speak, and immediately added, Your Majesty, the minister likes the kind of thing just now. In the future, the minister will be your bed companion, will you warm the bed and quilt, and will help you dress and bathe. You can do anything when you poop. Seeing the song's face was getting worse and worse, Su Fang flattened his mouth and was even more aggrieved. Your Majesty, the Su family is a man who stands upright, not to mention, and the Su family has a characteristic that they like a woman, love is for a lifetime. From my grandpa to my father, no one has ever accepted a lover, and the minister is the same as them. The cherisher likes you, and he will like it for a lifetime. Desolate and lonely. Yanj could not help rolling his eyes. Finally, you seem to know that you are a woman last night. In one night, you said you like me. Your Majesty, Chen Chen likes you. One glance is enough. It doesn't take all night. Yanj didn't have time to argue with him. He put on his lining under his diligent service, and then sat in front of the mirror and began to put on makeup. Seeing that Su Fang was still slippery, she could not help frowning. Go and put on your clothes. Su Fang was very wronged and wrapped the quilt on the bed. Your Majesty, have you forgotten, you tore all my clothes last night. Words of song. Who tears who? Tired and don't want to talk. After looking at the makeup and eyebrows, it seemed like a reborn song. Su Fang stared for a long time, and then said, if it wasn't for just being slept by His Majesty in the morning, Chen could not believe it anyway. His Majesty is a woman. Su Xian's emperor gave him too much courage. When he said this, he also respected him a lot. Yan Ji gave him a glance without saying a word, and turned out of the inner room. Su Fangshen was afraid of someone coming in, turned around, and lay back on the bed. Yanj went out, and first ordered Qin Gong Gong to send people to Su Fu to pick up Su Fang's clothes, and by the way report a piece to the Su family. Su Fang's entrance into the palace in the middle of the night was not a secret thing, the ministers had already heard about it early in the morning. When the early dynasty didn't start, the ministers in twos and threes gathered together to discuss the matter. Prime Minister Nalen Mo stood in his place and did not intend to integrate into everyone's circle.